able to see what are you able to see there, Sheila?
Yeah, I can see your screen, your PowerPoint presentation, but it's very, it's not in play mode yet.
Okay, how's that for you?
That looks good.
Okay, terrific. Just one moment. And I'll just make sure. Sorry, I usually like to arrive a little earlier so that I can get everything sorted before the presentation. If you'll just bear with me, everyone, and I'll make sure that we still keep to time, just so that I know that you're all busy people. Okay, here we go.
I'm going to turn my mic off now too, Heidi, so just yell if you need anything.
Yeah, that's terrific. Absolutely no problems at all. Okay, here we go. All right. Hello, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here to speak to you all. I'm sorry that I can't see your faces while I'm giving this presentation. Usually what I like to say is I'm very, very happy for you to stop me as we go along and ask questions. I'm equally happy to wait until the end to answer any questions that you might have. It's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you to Sheila for coordinating this, and I believe Louise may have been the person that connected us there in the background, which is really wonderful. I'm also an Aussie, like many of you on this call. My roots from way back in the day were actually with Taronga. So I spent a little bit of time at Taronga Zoo in the carnivore department, or sorry, the primate department, my apologies, as a volunteer back in, gosh, it was the early 2000s before moving out to Western Plains Zoo in Dubbo. But I've now been based in Asia full time since 2011. Almost that entire time, I've been working with Animals Asia. So first in China and now in Vietnam. And I am now the Vietnam country director as of 2024, so heading up our operations here in Vietnam. And I'm very pleased to be able to share with you our work to ending bear bile farming here in Vietnam. It's been a very long journey for us at Animals Asia. We've been in the country for over 25 years now, working on this. And I hope today that this might form somewhat of a case study that might be applicable or transferable to other carnivore issues that you all might be working on. I also hope to give you insight into some of the very human realities of our work. So you might find as I go through this presentation that there is a decidedly human bent in what I'm sharing with you, much more so than talking specifically about the bears or their rehabilitation or their husbandry. Because one thing that I have learned from my time working on ending the bear bile trade is that people really are the absolute key to success and everything we do. So one thing that I keep in mind in all of our work is that the person is not the problem. The problem is the problem. That's particular words from two therapists. I'm not sure if you know them, but their names are Michael White and David Epstein. And I really see that underpinning idea can really change how we see cruelty and how we approach it. So it's very easy, of course, to make enemies of people who we don't agree with. And in this case, it would be the bear farmers themselves. On the screen in front of you, this is one of our Malayan sun bears. She's been with us for, goodness, well over a decade now. Her name is Anne Marie. This is where she was kept. It almost looked like a kiln where you would fire pottery. That wasn't happening, of course, but it looked similar to that, if you could imagine that, at the back of a house. And Anne-Marie, this was her entire life. It was in her entire world. And she'd been in this cage, we suspect, since she was a much, much younger bear before we rescued her. She's since been here at the Vietnam Bear Rescue Centre, where I'm talking to you now. So when faced with this kind of cruelty, this kind of suffering, I think in a very human way, our minds and indeed our hearts, they demand a villain. They demand somebody to blame. And I think that that's understandable. But I also think that the minute that we create us and them, then we start to put up walls between the very people that we need to be working with to affect change. So during this presentation, I'm going to show you a little bit about how we really go about breaking some of those boundaries. And I want to be very clear that it's not about agreeing, liking, or condoning what's happening to the bears or the choices that people have made in having these bears on farms, but it's about meeting people where they're at so that we can win their hearts and win their minds and ultimately win the bears their freedom. Let me just tell you a little bit about bear farming, although I'm sure that you're quite aware of it. It actually started back in the 80s in North Korea. Bear farming was started as a way to actually conserve wild bears because traditionally wild bears, or historically I should say, wild bears would have been hunted and their gallbladders and other parts harvested for meat and traditional medicine, the case of the gallbladder. And what that was understandably doing was seeing an impact on wild bear populations. And so back in the 80s, when this first started, the idea was that farming of bears was a way to protect wild populations. So it spread to China and then it spread through various Southeast Asian countries, including Vietnam. And without a doubt, it has had the opposite impact on the conservation of bears. So beyond the dire welfare consequences, the very reason for bear farming to exist in the first place has been wholly unsuccessful. We've seen here in Vietnam either local extirpation of bear populations, if not dramatic bear population decreases. And at its height here in Vietnam in about 2005, there were over 4,300 bears on farms, and that's in Vietnam alone. In China at the moment, there's well over 10,000 bears. And in countries like Laos, bear farming is continuing to increase. So bear farming as an industry, as a conservation mechanism, has been wholly unsuccessful. The welfare impacts on the bears themselves are pretty self-evident. You can imagine that a sentient, highly intelligent species like a Asiatic black bear or a Malayan sun bear with their very complex and nuanced requirements being confined in a space like this is almost beyond comprehension what that must be like. We have met bears who have been kept in these farm cages for over 10 years. And in Vietnam, what usually happens is that these form their permanent living cages. They're generally around, I would say, 2 meters by 2 meters width and depth, and then probably around the same height. So there is in Vietnam, the bears generally have enough room to be able to turn around and move somewhat, but still wholly inadequate. Generally what happens is, depending on the farm here in Vietnam, the farmers will use a drug like ketamine to sedate the bears, and then they'll use ropes to rope the bears down in the cage, and then they'll open up the cage and they'll either bring the bear out of the cage onto a tarp, or perhaps they'll go into the cage with the bear. They'll generally use a ultrasound and a large spinal needle, and they will locate the gallbladder, and then they'll extract bear bile that way. We've seen farmers to know, because the farmers, or even if they've got perhaps not particularly skilled veterinarians assisting them with the procedure, we've seen them, in trying to locate the gallbladder, they will insert the needle into the abdomen. They will move it around or take it out, put it back in to try and find the gallbladder, bring it back out, touch the needle to the tip of their own tongue to see if they can taste the bitter bile before putting it back in the bear's abdomen. Now, this creates a whole bunch of issues for the bear, not least because the gallbladder is nestled there in the liver, and the liver is a particularly friable organ. So we see a lot of adhesions in the bears that we rescue around the liver and the gallbladder. We see a lot of tumors. We see a lot of other injuries. The bears, in trying to cope with this kind of an environment, they end up biting the bars of the cages, cracked teeth. We have some evidence, not so much in Vietnam, but certainly in China, of the bear's teeth being cut, their claws or their paw tips being removed. Hyperkeratosis on the paws, you can see that in this bear on the farm, because they're not standing on solid ground, they're standing on bars. And generally speaking, these bears are dehydrated and starved because of the way that the gallbladder works. It will release bile acids to help with digestion. So it therefore stands to reason that a bear that's not eating and drinking as much has no need to release that bile to help with digestion. And so what generally happens is that these bears are starved and dehydrated. And then, of course, their ability to express any meaningful range of natural behaviors is all but taken away from them, their ability to choose. And so we see a lot of psychological damage in the bears as well, in terms of stereotypic behaviors, fear. We've had some bears that appear to be displaying learned helplessness. So bear bile farming is a real tragedy. It's horrifically damaging on the bears. So again, how do we address this? Because behind this industry is people. And I think it's very, very easy to collapse people into a black or white. They're bear farmers and that's all they are. But in my experience, they're always much more. They are fathers, they are aunties, they are professionals with jobs like you and I have, different fields. They have debts to pay, they have pressures from their society. It's a very complex and nuanced problem that we have to solve. And it's not always about appealing to the farmers with a sense of compassion or animal welfare. So back in 2018, I actually conducted a study as part of my master's research, and interviewed bear bile farmers across Vietnam to understand more about their drivers. What did they care about? What were they thinking about when they were looking after their bears or interacting with their bears? There are a couple of things that really stood out. Most had never heard of the term animal welfare. In fact, when you use the word animal welfare in the Vietnamese language, it implies the welfare that people can get from animals rather than animal welfare as you and I might understand it. A lot of farmers thought that the bears were perhaps suffering, but didn't necessarily either have the language or perhaps the understanding of the behavioral ecology of bears to be able to describe why they were suffering. I saw a lot of descriptions of bears being happy and excited in their cages because they would bounce a lot or move back and forward a lot. As best as I would describe it, that would be a stereotypic behavior, but the farmers thought that was signs of a healthy and active bear. A lot of the farmers, I was quite surprised, described the bears as pets or as children, and of feeling a duty of care for the bears, which feels a little hard to digest, except that the way that the farmers would rationalize it is that they would talk about these bears having been a source of income and financial benefit for their families over the course of years. And they felt a duty to repay that to the bears by caring for them for the rest of their lives. So really, they spoke of this idea of reciprocity and owing the bears a debt after many years of bile extraction. So the other thing when interviewing the farmers was in trying to understand what would really motivate them to surrender their bears or voluntarily give up their bears. So there were a couple of key themes that come out of that research. One is this idea of legacy. So leaving a good legacy for the next generation, for their children. That's a very strong concept here in Vietnam culturally, doing good for your children, and this idea of karma and karmic repayal of debts or behaviors, or indeed getting karmic credit, I guess, for the next generation and in your next lifetime. And then, of course, in a very communal society like Vietnam, external pressure is very important. So either the government applying pressure, the authorities applying pressure, community disapproval, so that social contract of saying bear farming is okay, once that's removed, that's enough to get people to think twice about bear farming and to encourage people to give up their bears. And also seeing bears thrive in our sanctuaries. So we actually have 2 bear rescue centres here in Vietnam. We have one here, a facility for up to 200 bears in Tam Dao National Park, which is where I'm speaking to you from. I've lived here for the last decade. We have 174 bears here on site. The majority are Asiatic black bears, but we do have 12 Malayan sun bears now. So we also have another bear rescue centre, and our new one, fairly new, it's a couple of years old now, in Bac Ma National Park. For anyone who's been to Vietnam before, you may have been to Hue or Da Nang on the Central Coast. Our other sanctuary is there, and that's enough space for 120 bears. Right now, there are still around 150 bears on farms across Vietnam. So it's quite extraordinary to know the progress that's been made from a height of 4,300 bears in 2005 to 150 now. That's a significant decrease in the bears. The large majority of those bears have either passed away. We have rescued over 270 here in Vietnam, but we have space now. We have sanctuary space for every last bear currently on farms right now. If we could wave a magic wand and, oh, if only it was that easy, we could go and get every last bear off farms tomorrow and bring them all back to the sanctuary. So let me tell you a little bit about how we go about our work. Everything that we do is very much hand in glove with the authorities, with local community members, with the government, with the farmers themselves. So this is my predecessor, Tuan Ben Dixon, who set up our operations here in Vietnam back in 2005. And he's talking to one of the bear farmers here. What I really wanted to do today is to tell you about our work with the bear farmers in particular, because I think it's really powerful anecdote for human connection, and like I say, breaking down boundaries with people who on the surface of things seem very, very different from us. And to do that, what I want to do is talk to you about a particular bear, and her name was QQ. This is QQ on your screen right now, and this is the farm cage where she lived for I think it was around 20 years she lived in this farm cage. You can see, for the most part, she was standing on her own feces, where that cage to the bottom right of your screen, you can see where the cage had rusted through. So the floor of the cage was quite broken. So QQ is very interesting. She came to us a number of years ago now. And the reason that she came to us was actually one of our colleagues in Hanoi. She's actually our finance officer. Her name is Tao, and she'd gone to visit her friend. So just a social visit, a friend from school. And when she was there, they went to visit her friend's father, and at his house, sure enough, he had QQ in the garden in this cage. And in talking to her friend and talking to her friend's father, Tao was able to encourage him to reach out to us. And then 2 days later, here at the sanctuary, I got a call from the farmer. And he said, look, I've got a bear. Can I come out and see you? Of course, I said, and welcomed him with open arms. He came out with a couple of members of his family. He didn't bring QQ on that first visit, but we sat down over a cup of tea here at the sanctuary, and I asked him about his life. I asked him about QQ. He told me about her favorite foods. She really loved pumpkin and sweet corn. He told me that she had a name. That was remarkable in and of itself. Most bears we rescue don't have a name, but he'd named her QQ because it sounds a little bit like cute, cute. He said that he was worried. He was worried that we wouldn't have enough food to feed her. He was worried that she wouldn't be happy here. And so I invited him to come out to the sanctuary and have a look. I took him to our bear nutrition area, which had, huge heaping mounds of pumpkin and corn and apples and sweet potatoes and all the food that we always give our bears. And I remember seeing his eyes light up, and he said to me, yeah, okay, we can do this. I want you to take QQ. And so he invited us back to his house. It was a couple of weeks later, once we were able to get all the right approval paperwork, and we were able to bring QQ home in conjunction with the farmer and the authorities. And I said to him, if you ever want to come back out here and see QQ, you're always welcome. You're always welcome. And he did. He actually came back out with his wife and his granddaughter, who you can see in the picture here. And we were able to take him out to see QQ. By that stage, she was out of quarantine. All of our bears here have a 30-day quarantine, and she was out in one of our bear houses. She was actually out in the enclosures, and we gave her access to the den, and we brought the farmer out to the den, and QQ came over to the side of the den. People always ask what that was like, and I would never dare to guess what that was like for QQ. She came over to the side of the den, and she looked at the farmer and his wife. She didn't really react otherwise. I don't know what she felt. I don't know if she felt indifference, if she felt anger, if she felt recognition. I don't know. But I do like to think that the farmer looked at QQ and at least thought she deserved this all along. She deserved the chance to be a bear. She deserved the chance to have choice, space, and just very simple pleasures like the ability to be able to go outside on grass. And you can see that little insert on the screen that I've added. That's QQ out in the enclosure. And this farmer, I've got to say, when I look at him, sometimes I think, in another lifetime, he could have been my father. He's just a man, as fallible as the rest of us. And what I want to really get across is that by demonizing him, by judging him, by, doing anything other than welcoming him with open arms, I think we may not have got QQ. So I think that there's a real lesson there that we can apply in so much of our work, whether or not it's about carnivores and conservation or animal welfare, or even just dealing with someone in our day-to-day life. There's a real magic in connecting on a deeply human level. So let me just tell you how we're going to end bear bile farming here in Vietnam, because back in 2017, we signed a memorandum of understanding, an MOU, with the Vietnamese government to end bear bile farming by this year, by 2026. So on the screen, on the right there, that's Jill Robinson, who I'm sure many of you, if not all of you, know, our founder and CEO. She started Animals Asia back in 1998 in China. So we have an agreement with the government to end bear bile farming from this year. So we have wonderful relationships with the Vietnamese government. There's no cloak and dagger vigilante style work going on here. Everything we do is very much hand in glove with the authorities. And we now this year have a laser focus on seeing that through. So we have everything in order now to be able to make that a reality. One of the things that we do in terms of working with our community members, particularly in Phuoc Tuong commune, which is actually about 90 minutes from here in Hanoi, and it's actually the last great stronghold of bear farmers and bear farms in the entire country. So of the 150 bears on farms in Vietnam right now, more than half of them are in Phuoc Tuong, really close to where I'm sitting right now. We have developed a program there where we work with the Vietnamese Traditional Medicine Association to provide herbal alternatives to bear bile. And what you can see the elder women in the photo here holding is a book of herbal alternatives to bear bile that we produced with in conjunction with the Vietnamese Traditional Medicine Association. And that little box there holds a little pottle or a little tub of herbal alternatives to bear bile using 13 different herbs that the Vietnamese Traditional Medicine Association recognize as alternatives that are effective, and it's very, very popular in the local community. We provide free health clinics once a month in this local commune, and it's a way that we're able to create goodwill with the local community while respecting local traditions, by being guided and led by local traditions, and showing that there are pathways out of bear bile farming. The other thing that we've done is worked with the Vietnamese Traditional Medicine Association back in 2015. We have a memorandum of understanding with them to stop the prescription of bear bile since 2020, and that's happened. So Vietnamese traditional medicine practitioners no longer prescribed bile, but they will prescribe our herbal alternative. And last year, we had, this is a photo from this event that we had in Lan Ong Street, which is the traditional medicine street in Hanoi. If you're over here in the Old Quarter, you can go and see it, where we actually distribute our herbal alternatives to the various shops there. They can sell it. We don't do it for profit. We give the herbal alternative to the shops for free, great boxes of it, and they can sell it because it means that they make a little bit of profit out of it, which is great, but all the while they're also reinforcing with the local community that herbal alternatives exist and are effective and are recognized by the Vietnamese Traditional Medicine Association. So overall, this is, well, actually, just let me tell you one other story. This is a rescue from last year. It was in Haiphong, which is, if you've ever been here and you've been to Ha Long Bay, or you've been to Cat Ba Island up in northern Vietnam, Haiphong is just on the mainland, quite close by. This was a rescue of a bear. We nicknamed him Haiphong because that's where he came from. And this was his family. This was the farmer, the older woman that you can see at the back, and her grandchildren. And that rescue, we knew it was the first rescue that we'd done from Haiphong for, years, maybe 6 or 7 years. So we knew how important this rescue was, not only to get Haiphong the bear out, but also we knew that the community was watching us. We knew that the authorities were watching us, and we knew that the media were watching us. So it had to go well, and it had to be kind, it had to be diplomatic. And so we made sure, I mean, it wasn't false. It's how we operate our work anyway in Vietnam. But, you know, we made sure to sit down with the family and talk to them. We brought them our little Mooney, the moon bear, gave to the grandchildren, spoke to the owner for quite a while. And we now have Haiphong at the sanctuary here. But I think what is all telling is that this rescue was covered by the media in Haiphong, and not so long afterwards, just a couple of weeks later, we got a call from another bear farmer there with another bear, said that she'd seen the story and how the rescue was conducted, and we were able to go back and rescue her bear as well, who we nicknamed Smokey. So this works. This approach works, and it's going to be the key to how we get the remaining bears off farms here in Vietnam. So I guess my challenge or my question would be for all of you is, how might you, in your work, as many and varied as your different roles, your different focuses might be, how might you apply something like this? How might you look at someone, some group, some character, some individual that you don't agree with, that you hold vastly different opinions and views with, and how might you find that middle ground? Because that middle ground always exists, always. It can be maddening and frustrating and deeply painful to find it, especially when you know a species is on the brink or an individual animal is suffering. But that middle ground exists, and you can find it if you take the time. So that would be my challenge, and I hope my inspiration for you all during our time today, to see how you might take this and apply it to your own work. So before I go, well, I'll still be here to answer questions, of course. If you want to scan this little QR code, you can watch one of our rescued bears, Dawn, step out into grass for the very first time. It's a really beautiful video. That'll take you to a link to our YouTube page, and you'll be able to find lots of our work there, including more about Dawn's story. She's quite an iconic bear here at the sanctuary. All right, thank you very much. Maybe I'll hand it back over to Sheila now and see if you've got any questions, and we can take it from there.
Thank you, Heidi, for a really interesting and inspirational talk. I think you've really highlighted how respect, education, and working with local communities can make such a huge difference. And my hat is off to Animals Asia for all that groundbreaking work. So we have some people here, I'm sure, who'd love to have a chat. So I'm going to hand it over to anyone who has any questions.
Sure, that sounds wonderful.
Does anyone have any questions for Heidi that they'd like to ask while she's online, or any comments about the presentation?
I have a quick question, Heidi. Obviously, not all of your sort of rescues go like that way, the sort of examples you've given us. How do you handle the ones that aren't so, that they need to be taken, but they aren't so like amicable? Do you come across that, or?
Yeah, it's a really smart question. To be frank with you, Rebecca, most of these last 150 bears are exactly what you're describing. The cases, they're exactly what you're describing. The last, these 150 cases will be some of our hardest. So they are often farmers who are, what we're finding is they're deeply entrenched in either wanting compensation for their bears. Our policy at Animals Asia is that we don't compensate for the bears for a number of reasons. One is we don't want to compensate for what is an illegal practice. Bear bile farming has been illegal in Vietnam since 1992. So we don't want to compensate for that, not least because of the ramifications for other species such as tigers, who are also being farmed in Vietnam. We don't want to, stimulate the trade. Also because not once have we seen a situation where the bears are a meaningful livelihood for the farmers. That's I know you didn't ask that question, but I often get asked, what do you do for the livelihoods of the farmers? And most of the farmers, invariably, when we turn up to rescue these bears, they are extremely rich individuals. You will see a village, and it's almost always the big, large concrete house with the pillars and the statues and the koi pond. They're the bear farmers. So these are wealthy individuals, not because of bear farming, often because of other reasons. We have there was a bear we nicknamed Phoenix, who we confiscated from a drug dealer, actually. So, you know, these are very wealthy individuals. So how do we approach that? Actually, that farmer that I showed you a picture of at the start, the gentleman who I said he in another lifetime could have been any of our fathers, right? He is actually helping us with a really terrific project right now. We're working with a documentary maker. He's come back out to the sanctuary a couple of times now to see QQ, and he's spoken to camera about his experience of handing her over, about the legacy that he's leaving for his children by handing her over, about what he thinks about the care that she's getting, and really acting as an advocate for the voluntary transfer of bears to the sanctuary. So speaking directly to the farmers, rather than it coming across as Animals Asia propaganda or NGO speech, it's very much from him. So that's one of the ways that we're doing it. The other thing that we are trying to affect all of these bears being able to come back to the sanctuary is by ultimately what we would like to see is a mandate from probably the prime ministerial level to make it illegal to hold bears in private residences, because right now, because of a particular, I'm not sure loophole is quite the right word, but it's similar. In 2005, back, I said that there was 4,300 bears on farms. Back then, the authorities, Vietnam government wanted to do something about it, but no, there was no sanctuaries in Vietnam at the time. Even if there were, how on earth could anyone take 4,000 bears? So they passed a particular piece of regulations that said that as long as bears were microchipped and registered, and farmers signed that they wouldn't extract bile, they could continue to keep bears in private residences. And that regulation, that still holds true. So any bear from 2005, technically they're still legally allowed to be kept in these cages. So unfortunately right now, bear bile farming is illegal. Having bears like QQ in those cages or Anne Marie is not. So we're coming at it from a couple of different angles in terms of trying to really get to those last remaining farms. I hope that's helpful. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah,
it's quite
I have another one.
work.
Sorry, I don't want to dominate the question.
Sure, Rebecca.
Do you think that when you kind of get that start of getting like that documentary and the government and everything, do you think you will just take like one or two in that situation that they're holding bears to kind of give up the bears, and do you think that will have a domino effect on the rest, like once you kind of tap at it and get in there?
Yeah, really smart. Yes. So we saw that again, this local commune, Phuoc Tuong, quite close to here, that's a bear bile farming hotspot. For years, we could not get no one, not just Animals Asia, no organization, because there are other organizations in Vietnam working on ending bear bile farming too. Nobody could get bears out of that area. And it took one farmer and a very quiet, very respectful, low-key rescue to get the first bear. Her name was Amy. She only lasted 33 days with us because she was so sick. To get her out of there. And once that happened, it was almost like social proof of the idea that I can get out of bear farming and it's okay. And then once other farmers saw that, we could then work with them to get their bears out. Now we've got nearly 20 bears out of that region now, that commune. So it absolutely works. And it's a really important concept here in Vietnam. That idea of loss of face is very, very important in Vietnam. People don't want to lose face. I don't think any of us do, even Aussies or Kiwis or anyone. None of us want to be embarrassed, right? But here in Vietnam, there's like an extra focus on that, I think. And so we have to be very, very mindful of that. So for sure, what you're saying is spot on.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
Heidi,
any other questions?
Yeah, I've got a question. So in situations where you are getting surrendered bears that are not in good health conditions, does that hamper the project in any way from the people that are actually handing over the bears for care? Or is there a realization or an understanding that the bear that you're receiving may not make it because of all the medical issues it's sustained? And how do you go about that in a respectful, kind way that it's not going to work in reverse, basically?
Yeah, smart question. That is absolutely one of the concerns of the farmers. They will tell us time and time again, we don't want to give our bear up to Animals Asia or to the sanctuary because we're worried they'll die. We're worried you won't have enough food. We're worried something bad will happen. So the video or the documentary that I was talking about that we're doing with QQ's former owner speaks to that. So it speaks to the care that she's got. A really nice example, actually. I was just talking about it with the team yesterday. So QQ's owner thought that she was always quite well, thought that she was quite healthy, and seemed like quite a strong bear. Once she came to us, our veterinary team diagnosed hypertension. So she had high blood pressure, and she was actually going blind. And the farmer had no idea. It was a painful, a very painful condition. And actually, QQ had to have both eyes enucleated. And the farmer has been out to see her since, and he's spoken on camera about how he just had no idea, and he's so thankful that she was able to get that treatment. So I guess we're coming at it from that angle that these bears, they are unwell, they're sick, they're damaged. We're not blaming anyone, but we can give them expert veterinary care, expert behavioral husbandry care, and rehabilitate them, and they can live out the rest of their lives in the sanctuary. And we're coming at it from the angle, we're coming at it from a very human angle, in that, most of the bear farmers are around 60 to 70 years old now. And we're appealing to their sense of, as you get older, you want a peaceful life. You want to be cared for. You want to be safe and secure, have excellent healthcare. We can give that to your bears. They're still your bears, but let us look after them for you. And if you want to come and visit them, you're always welcome. And that's sincerely the truth. So yeah, we're coming at it from that angle. But yeah, it's a good question.
Yeah, it's brilliant. I think obviously there's a lot of navigating through sensitivities that has to be done by you and your staff. And I would imagine that, yeah, some people think that they are doing the very best care for their animals, yet we know that there's always something better, or there's underlying issues with animals that they don't actively show us that can cause huge ramifications down the track. So again, I'm in awe of what you do, and I really appreciate this talk, Heidi. I think it's been very enlightening.
Yeah, no worries, Sheila. Thanks for organizing it. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. I don't know if there's maybe some questions on the chat. Let me have a look. There might be. Well, thanks for the nice messages, Kay and Louise and Michaela. I hope I'm not saying your name wrong. Yeah, no questions there. Okay, well, I'm not sure if anyone has any more questions. You're always welcome. Sheila's got my email address. You're welcome to reach out, or you can find me on LinkedIn. If there's anything you'd like to follow up about, or you want any further information on anything, yeah, I'd be delighted to keep in touch with any of you.
Thanks again, Heidi, and my apologies for the mix-up with drop-in lines and codes, etc. I thought we had it all sorted, and my because I'm at home myself, it's difficult to get onto my work email, so that's why I haven't responded. And I'm like, what's
Please
going
don't
on?
worry. No, please don't worry. I was just worried because I thought, gosh, they're all going to think I'm all flaky. I just didn't turn up. As long as you guys don't mind that I was a bit late, it's no problem for me. Don't worry. I know how these things go. Yeah.
No,
Can't be helped. Don't worry about it.
It was brilliant. Thanks again, Heidi, for your
Thank
time.
you.
Really appreciate it.
Okay.
Thanks,
Bye now,
Heidi.
everyone. Bye.
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 Okay.